Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the second episode of Get to Know. My name is Joshua BurntSanctuary Keller, and don't forget, if you like the show, to give it a thumbs up and subscribe, because that will help the channel grow as I'm just starting with this right now. And yeah, well, my second guest is actually, if you watched the first episode already, the duo partner of Jay. It is Joshua Dweg, Nathan, and of course, as Jamie is the play-by-play, he is the color commentator, and you are active since 2016. You're actually still really, really young. I was surprised when I saw this because I know you are in the scene for quite a while. So, I mean, just say it yourself. How old are you right now? You started in 2016, we're in 2021 right now. How old are you, and when did you start?
Yeah, I'm 20. So I'll be 21 next month. It's kind of crazy to think back, but yeah, started just after my 16th birthday. I think it was about when I was like just turning from 15 to 16 when I started getting into it. It all
Yeah.
kind of started at least when I went to my first CS LAN, and then from there it kind of was like, hey, casting's my thing, let's do it.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of crazy because I remember you from back then. I never knew you were this young, so I was pretty crazy when I also looked up. I double checked as well. But yeah, you recently, together with Jay, you recently had such a big event, and must have been such an amazing experience, which you can also talk me through and how that hit you as well. You casted into the Extreme Master 16 Cologne, and that is such a massive event. That's the cathedral of CS:GO. How did you feel when you got the news?
Yeah, obviously amazed, right? Like there's no sugarcoating it. This is Cologne, and for it to be the first LAN back in what feels like forever, since we've kind of transitioned into an
Yeah,
online period, it was great, to be able to get the opportunity to work the beat stream. Obviously casting with Jay in that event, having Dinko and Hawker as our guys that we sort of bounced off. That they did some of the games, we did the others, and we just swapped between the two of us. It was great, and honestly, it was I want to say a long time coming. Been casting for a while. That was my first ever studio event, which is kind of crazy. Whether you look at that as a
that
positive,
is
whether you
crazy.
look at
Yeah.
that as a negative, that like yeah, maybe you could say all right, like you have a studio event like a smaller one, and it's like oh you get the building blocks. No, like I was just thrown straight into the deep end, gone from doing online for years and years, and then doing Cologne in a studio for a LAN event. $1 million prize pool, like it's a big jump, and yeah, it was a great opportunity.
I mean, for sure, that can be seen in a positive light because now you finally know, like you made it to this point. I mean, you can only go up from here. That is of course like great news. But let's start at the beginning. You were 16 when you just started. How did you even get into esports? How did you get into casting at the year
Yeah,
of 16?
it's a funny story actually. So a lot of the guys that I went to high school with, we all kind of played CS. I would say
Yeah.
the majority of us were like in like the skin sort of game, like oh we like the new skins. Used to like watch a lot of the pro matches on like CS:GO Lounge and stuff like that, like way back in the day. And there was like an expo in Sydney where I lived in Australia. I
Yeah.
guess like if you're from America, like E3 is like the equivalent. I don't know if there's anything in Europe that's kind of similar to that.
Gamescom, I would
But
say. In
yeah,
Cologne,
yeah,
actually. Yeah.
Gamescom actually,
Yeah.
yeah, that's probably like a similar comparison. So anyway, it was a massive expo. It was like 2 or 3 days, I want to say. I think it was like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I just got the Friday ticket, and I went with like 6 friends from school. And I mean, this place is pretty big, and we were planning to like go to the first booth, go to the second. You look out the whole
Yeah.
expo, you check out the whole hall, and the first building we went into, they had a local CS:GO LAN going on, which was EB Expo 2016, and it had like a couple of the top Aussie teams, and I was like, I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna watch it for half an hour, and I was just glued. Like I sat down. Obviously, I'd been playing CS, and I knew about it, but once I saw the pro scene in person, I was just stuck, and I was like, I'm just gonna watch map after map, series after series, and I saw the commentators sort of coming down from like their little like section on the stage, and I remember actually because I didn't really know many of the players or many of the commentators. I was like pulling up HLTV and I was like looking at everyone's name, and every time I see a player go past, I'll be like, "Oh, hi, hats! Like, how you going?" Sort of thing like that. Like, I had no idea who these players were. And I was looking on like Wikipedia, and I happened to find like the casters' names. So I was like, "Oh, hi! Like, how you going?" And it was actually Karath, Kevin, who was or still kind of is an ESL caster. I know that he's not as active as he used to be, but I kind of got talking with him, and he was like, "Oh, you know, if you're interested in commentating, like hit me up on what used to be called Cybergamer back in the day. Send me a message, and you know, I'll give you some tips and things like that." So like I recorded some like YouTube video. God, it's still out there, like it's unlisted. Absolutely terrible. But I sent it to him, and I think he mentioned the AGTV guys, the Aussie Gaming TV, which was like a small Australian agency of like up and coming casters. And I got in touch with them, and then that's kind of the inroad of like where I started like getting into doing like CGA, CGI, some of like the Div 3, Div 4 AU, like CS casting, like really down in the pits if you kind of compare it, right? Like low div Australian CS at the time.
Yeah, but that's interesting because I feel like a lot of those casters, they just get into it online. You actually didn't really get into it online. You met someone offline and they brought you into it. So that's actually, I mean, a different story, which I don't think a lot of people can say like this, that they had it like this. But yeah, you talked about being in Australia. But if people follow you right now, they will know you are not in Australia right now. You're in the UK. So I already talked to you about this before as well, because you were young. You were still going to school when you started casting, but I also remember you were casting a lot of EU events in Australia. So what was like kind of the struggle as well, living in Australia, and then of course later on, how did you get in to the UK as well?
Yeah, well, it was funny. I remember the first 9 months that I started casting. Never got a paycheck. Never, like, it was all free. It was all volunteer stuff. But how it
You gotta
sort
start
of,
somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, you do, mate. You really.
I mean,
do.
I did it. Yeah, for me it was the same. I mean, I did a
Yeah.
LAN event actually at my first event, but I didn't get paid. So you gotta start somewhere for sure.
And I guess getting the parents or my parents involved was a bit of a difficult one at the beginning, because they kind of thought that I was just like playing games, and they were like, "Oh, why does he want a new microphone, and why is he staying up all the time, not doing homework and doing this and that?" And it wasn't really until I took them to like one of the local lands in Sydney that we had, that they kind of saw it, and I think they like spoke to one of the guys there, and I got a little bit more of an understanding. So when sort of my parents were on board and kind of realized what casting was and the Counter-Strike scene and things like that, it got a little bit easier. But still, if I remember like how the EU casting started, so Flakes, that like back in the day used to do a fair bit of casting from the UK, he reached out to one of the guys from AGTV, Goldie, and he was like unavailable, and he was like, "Oh, like Dweg's like kind of an up and comer. Do you want to give him a go?" And I think I filled in on one of the broadcasts for. It could have been Efrag, like the first European broadcast that I did for like the Razer Southeast Asia Rising Stars or something like that. And I was just like down the line, just a stand-in for someone that couldn't make it. And that was kind of like the taste of European stuff. But it's difficult because, first of all, internet is pretty shocking in Australia. Like I had 8 megabits per second download and 0.2 megabits per second upload speed. So even casting was proper rough. There were so many broadcasts in the early days. I was just lagging so bad, and it just sounded terrible. And as well, like I was still at school. When I was like getting into the European stuff and doing a fair bit of it, it was like, right, finish school at 3:15, get home. I would, I think, go to bed straight away, and then wake up about 6 o'clock in the evening, 7 o'clock in the evening, start doing my research, my prep, start the broadcast, finish at like 3, 4, 5 in the morning, do a little bit of homework, have like a 1 or 2 hour nap, and then go to school. And that used to happen 3 days, 4 days a week sometimes. And yeah, it was a struggle. It was really tough. And that's kind of when I knew, like, long term, this just wasn't going to happen. Because even back home in Oz, like, there weren't that many opportunities. And whether this is true or not, I don't know. But I had the feeling that a lot of the casters around me at the time kind of got robbed off the wrong way, that they'd been grinding longer than I had, and they weren't getting European opportunities, and I was. So I think there was a lot of casters back home at the time that weren't really too pleased with me getting like all the European work, even though, like, I say European work, it was still like quals and little stuff like back in the day. And then I guess sort of like fast forward to my last year at school, I took a little bit more time away from casting, focused on trying to just finish school, get some good grades, see what happens from there. And then Gfinity, who had already run their UK Elite Series, had come over to Australia, and I was like, okay, this is my chance. I'm going to try and get in with them to do some casting, and it just fell through. I wasn't experienced enough. They gave me an observing gig, which I did for a couple of seasons. And as well, over the years that I'd been grinding back home in Oz, I knew that ESL just weren't going to hire me. Like ESL Australia, I was talking to some of the guys. They had a good talent lineup. I've got to be honest. Like they had some really good casters and really good analysts. Why would they employ a 17-year-old that's done online broadcast for a year? Like it makes sense, right? But
Yeah,
at
that
the
for sure.
time,
Yeah, that's
I
true.
looked at it and I was like, they're never going to hire me. Maybe if I did improve, there could have been an opportunity. But I looked at it and I thought, if I stay here in Oz, I'm going to go to uni and I'm going to do a bit of casting on the side. I'm never going to make it like full time.
Yeah, yeah. So, how did you actually get to the UK in the end?
Okay, so both my parents are British. So they were born
Ah,
in Britain and then moved to
yeah.
Australia in the late 90s. So it means that I'm a dual national. So I have an Australian passport and I have a British passport, and all my family live here in the UK. All my uncles, aunties, cousins, grandparents, they're all here. So it's only my parents that are in there in Australia. So when I looked at it, I've got British passport. I've got family here, and I kind of said to myself, and I said to my parents as well, give it a year. Like I'll come over here after a year. If it doesn't work, if doesn't quite happen the way that we would have liked, so be it. It's a learning experience. I go back home. I go to uni, whatever. And that's kind of the outlook I had of coming to the UK. It wasn't until I kind of saw it being successful that I knew myself, okay, this can actually be full time and something that can go on for years and years.
All right. So, in the end, though, your parents definitely also were like behind you. I think that also
Yeah,
doesn't happen necessarily that often, especially considering you moved from Australia to the UK to another continent quite far away. So that's actually great to see. And I mean, when was it when you had like your first big like gig, or what were your first
mm,
few gigs starting in the UK, especially when you're just like, can I actually do it? Can I make it here?
yeah. I mean, I kind of have to look back and see, but I remember like the first one was obviously Epic LAN, which is like a BYOC LAN that we have in the UK.
Yeah.
Was Epic LAN 26 was my first one, and I hadn't been in the country very long because I moved to England in November of 2018, and like it was Christmas, and as well like I didn't bring anything with me. I brought like a microphone, and that was it. Like I had no PC, so it came to like, okay, I've got to get my PC, I've got to like organize my desk. So the first couple of months that I was actually here, like I wasn't doing anything. I was just getting set up. Even things like trying to get a bank account was just ridiculous because a lot of things in England you had to have proof of address, but I'd only just moved here. So how could I have a letter that says I live at this address if I've only just moved here? So opening up bank accounts and getting all different like insurance numbers and all, it just took so long. So I think Epic Lam was like early 2019. So that was kind of like my first event. And I guess I was just kind of relying on a lot of the contacts as well. Like, obviously, I don't
Yeah.
want to say that, like, I'm best friends with all the casters out there, but over the years, like, because you work alongside them, even if you never casted with them, you're always chatting on Discord and Twitter. And I guess just sort of once I got into the UK, chatting with a couple of different people and trying to see, okay, what gigs are around, where can we go? And yeah, that was kind of the start of it, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. So you're just to because I wonder right now. So
Mm.
you were still close to like some of your other family members there, or you kind of were completely on your own in the UK?
No, pretty close. So I was living with, I still am, living with family at the moment.
Okay, cool.
So it was pretty central. Like I live in northwest London, and I would say the majority of our family live like less than 15-minute drive away from me. So everyone's really close quarters. So it's really simple and it's really easy.
Yeah, but for sure that was a big step for you to come in here. But in the end, it worked out, and I think sometimes you gotta take the leap of faith, but also give you
Yeah.
a limited amount of time. Because if I compare this to me now, I was working with Unicorn for a while. In the end, they decided to just split up the studio. Obviously, out of that result, I lost my job as well, and I was just like, yeah, what do I do now? And I came
Yeah.
to a point where I was just like, all right, but now I'm just gonna focus on studying, and I'm gonna do that. So I think it's always good. Also, if you show your example as well, give yourself time, but not too much.
Yeah.
Know when it's like
Yeah, for sure.
how far you can go as well. Like because at some point you might get into deep as well. So I think we have like two examples, you and me, as well, which I think always interesting things to talk about as well, from casters or generally people who take the leap of faith. Work hard to get into position. It will not always work out, but you should take your chances for sure. I think we take a step back though, because if I remember correctly,
Yeah.
the whole Efrag thing, I think that's always like a popular story. I think you were one of those who they kind of ripped off the like biggest, if I remember correctly. You worked with them quite a lot, right?
I did, but I didn't. So I worked with them quite a lot. I know, like, this is obviously a bit of a touchy subject for some people. But in terms of like being owed money, I guess if we kind of go towards the end of Efrag, I actually wasn't owed a massive amount. Like they paid me. I mean, I think it was like all over PayPal and stuff like that back in the day.
Yeah,
And I know the rates were pretty low as well for Efrag, but
for sure.
a lot of people probably look at that whole situation as a negative. It's weird to say, but I almost look at it as a positive, to be honest, because where I think I was doing AU stuff. I remember like my first season, like casting ESCAP in back home. It was like season 20. There was that going on. There was CG. And that was it. Like there was nothing. I got on for like a couple of like ESL, AU, and NZ broadcasts doing like the C stream and stuff like that for a couple broadcasts here or there. But I wasn't really doing a lot. So when Efrag came along, yeah, looking back at it now, it wasn't the best situation for anyone, but it kind of got me an in. And I want to say, without Efrag, I don't even know if I'd be where I am today, because that was my taste of European stuff. That was my in where I never got it. So they were the first ones that gave me, like, what was it back then? You had like all the farm skins cups and the epicenter quals and like some of the razor. Like I mean, it's so long ago, right? You remember as well how like dated this is. This is like 2017 we're talking. So I do look at it as maybe not the funnest of times and maybe not the most positive moment at all in my career, but they gave me a stepping stone. They gave me a lot of advice back in the day. They put me with some really good casters. Like I worked with Flakes. I worked with Jay on Efrag way back. Seaside was another one. I don't think I ever actually worked with him. Had a chance of casting with Hawker and Dinko and Dean and Mitch. So all in all, it's probably different stories depending on who you talk to, but I look at it as kind of a positive, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm also glad that you actually got paid. Still like a good amount of money.
Some people didn't, mate. I know that much.
Yeah, I know some didn't get paid at all, and that just sucks for sure. And I think that's something you really wanna like. That's kind of the people you want completely out of esports as well. I'm actually just interested to see, because I don't think and I guess I can be lucky to say that, but I am pretty sure, because I never worked. No, I think I worked with Efrag, but not a lot of events, and they at least paid me, because it wasn't a lot of money. So I never came to the point where, I mean, I think I accepted some rates where was too low, and I was just like, if I take this now, maybe I get some opportunities to get bigger, which I think is still something bad. That's still the classic, but that obviously is my bad. But I never really, like, I never got ripped off. I never had like a point where I didn't get my money. I get my money sometimes pretty late, where I got to poke a little bit. But was like Efrag for you? Was it like the same experience outside of Efrag, or were you a bit more unlucky in some other?
No,
all right.
There were some delay payments with them for sure.
Everyone knows those.
I mean, there's some like TOs out there where I got paid like 15 months after the event had finished and stuff like that. But like I'm pretty sure if I look back at it now, I was owed like 400 euros, so maybe 300. Like it really wasn't a lot. To be honest, like I know some of them were in the thousands for some of the others, but
Yeah,
for
yeah,
me,
I
it was
know.
like obviously everyone wants to get paid, right? I'm not going to sit there and back Efrag because they gave me an in. Like still, they ripped a lot of people off. They didn't pay people, but I was the one more so that was like unaffected as such in comparison to some of the other guys for sure.
Yeah, for you it actually was like the kind of stepping stone, because they always look at events and be like, oh, what could be my stepping stone to actually move
Yeah,
forward as well? Could
yeah.
that be it? So for you, actually, even though you didn't really get, like, you didn't fully get paid in the end, that was your stepping stone to even get to where you are right now, and you never would have been without them. So yeah, I see where you see the positives out of it. And let's talk actually about another company you work with. Jay brought it up earlier as well, that it actually also helped you, although you weren't casting, but you were working, I think as an intern though, with Blast for a while. So,
Yeah.
And that actually was just recent. Was it 2020 actually?
Yeah, so it would have been, I think I started in about August. I might have to have a look at this. I think it was about mid 2020 till, no, that can't be right. It has to be 2019.
Yeah,
So
and it probably was
it must have
2019.
been mid 2019 to early 2020 was how I think I worked there like 7 months or so, if
Yeah,
I remember
yeah.
correctly. Yeah.
So yeah, what did you actually do? I mean, I know you didn't cast, and you kind of were like, you were bound to Blast, but Jay already told me, but I think you can just tell me a lot better. What did you take away from them?
Yeah, a lot, honestly. So it was funny how I went to like a dinner, like a family friends dinner one night, and when you see someone and you know the face, but you don't really know where, and you think to yourself, oh, where do I know this person from? And anyway, I was at this dinner and I recognized this person. We're kind of sitting down and we're talking about esports and things like that. And he was like, oh, my name's Robbie, and didn't really pick up on anything. And he was like, oh, I'm the CEO of Blast. And I was like, ah, okay, that's
course.
where I know you from. So we were kind of talking, and I told him that I was a caster, and he's like, oh, why don't you come down to the office one time? So I think like we kind of went back and forth with emails a little bit. I went into the office, I sort of explained what I did and what I was kind of looking for, and I got signed for like an internship there for like 7 months or so. And I guess I was working in quite a lot of different fields. Like I was helping out mostly on like the like deck creation was kind of like my one, like reaching out to new potential clients, trying to show them what the Blast product is. I was helping out the social team with coming up with some ideas, some video concepts, things for the broadcast. I was kind of like all over the place, like just learning a lot from them. Because I guess up until that point, I'd done a little bit of observing, I'd done mainly casting, but in terms of like the business side of esports, I had no idea. Absolutely no idea about it. So being able to work with a company at Blast, kind of opened up my eyes to how much more there really is that I can add to my casting behind the scenes, networking, deck creation and emails, and how you can be in contact with people outside of just being on a microphone, being on a camera. Like there is so much more that I learned with my time there.
Yeah, I fully agree with this, because I was not working with esports companies, but I was actually working with like some rather like mainstream companies as well, as an intern in like a movie production called Schokolade TV, which is a German movie production for like advertisement, and they are working with some like big companies as well. So I could take a lot away from there, for example, because I had to do this in my university. Like you have to have one semester where you just work with the company as well to get some experience.
Yeah.
Which is amazing though. I think it's just like you can also you can just write that down in your CV and be like, hey, I actually worked at a company as an intern as well. That just helps you for the future if you're looking for jobs, obviously, like generally. And you take a lot away from it as well. And so I did with my studies, because I realized myself, outside of esports, I love casting. I want to go like focus more on casting again and all of this kind of stuff. But outside of that kind of things, although I could apply what I learned in university in esports as well, I focused so much on marketing.
Okay.
And those kind of stuff I also could apply a lot to be like, hey, there are a lot more ways to present myself. So I feel like
Yeah.
you also had the kind of realization, hey, there's much more than I can do than just like go in front of the camera for all those events and just cast. There's a lot more to it.
Yeah, and honestly, I guess that's probably something for the up and comers to kind of keep an eye out for. Is it's not just about casting. Like there's so much going on that you need to know. And I guess you want to just say that it comes down to experience. I know that Jay, you had on before, yourself, myself. Like we've been in the game a while. Where like some of the other guys have been casting 9 months, a year, 18 months. It's very different because when you do get thrown into it, being very young and very new to it, there's so much that I don't want to say you miss out on, but you just don't know about yet because you haven't been in the game for that long.
Yeah. There's a lot to learn, a lot to take away, and I think it's always good to, which I also learned even in marketing. So my personal recommendation as well is look at what those like big guys are doing, because they got there somehow. You can take away things. So I think that's always good advice to give as well, of course. And I mean, you got quite far. I was mentioning it earlier already. IEM Cologne, that was really, really big event. And I think like you had quite a journey from like just summarizing it quickly. You saw in Australia, you met some like casters, they got you in. You got to film for a caster to get a EU gig. And then obviously also you took away a lot by like being an intern at Blast as well. That's a lot of like, and obviously, of course, one of them started moving to the UK itself as well. So a lot of like amazing stories, and of course, sometimes I think for everyone, for every big caster, sometimes there's like the little bit of luck as well, like adding to the skill as well. But was there like a point with all those amazing stories? Are there some stories where you just like you felt like hell, and you felt like it wasn't going the way you wish it would go, and you were like a bit close to like, giving up, and there was a chance you never actually reached this far as you have done right now?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a couple of times. Like the first time is probably back home at Oz. Like when I knew that I wasn't really going to get any jobs from ESL Australia, and then I applied for Gfinity. This was a big LAN coming into Sydney. It was on home turf. Like it was so close to where I lived. And when I got knocked back for that, I was like, man, like that was my chance right there. I'd been working close to a couple of years, might have been like 18 months, nearly 2 years. Like that, come on, like please, I'd really like a chance in studio, on LAN, prove myself. And it didn't happen. And at that point, like, yeah, the observing gig was great. And I actually learned a lot. I really enjoyed observing. And it was something that even when I came to the UK, I tried to continue doing. I remember one of the ESL, like, producers reached out to me when I was working at Blast about being like a fill-in observer for IM New York, I think it was, and because I was working at Blast at the time, I didn't have the time available, and I wasn't kind of working with anyone else at the time when I was working at Blast. Outside of that, like I didn't get any like real observing opportunities, so I kind of pushed that a bit of aside. But when I did get knocked back from Gfinity, that was probably a moment where I was like, right, this could be over, because there's nothing for me here. And honestly, knowing that there wasn't anything for me here was kind of what pushed me in the direction of, okay, if I want to make this work, I've got to go overseas. I've got to go to Europe.
Yeah, in the end, you got to take the opportunities which are there, and if they're just not in Australia, well, you got to take them somewhere else for sure. So totally get you there as well. So yeah, I think like any one of us had like the point. I think me myself as well, giving up, and like being like, this is really gonna work out. But in the end, if you want to write your story the way you want to, you gotta work hard. And sometimes, of course, a bit of luck as well involved as well. But in the end, Intel Extreme Master 16 Cologne. That's just the start, right? What is the more like in the future? What do you have planned right now? I know you have as we record this video, next week you're gonna start casting again with Jay, of course. But I asked him the same question: what is there for the future? What are you like your goals for the near future, and of course, long-term future goals as well?
Yeah, you've got to be realistic. To say that I'm going to be the best caster in the world in a couple of years' time, I think it's not going to happen. Because when you look at the field, especially in Counter-Strike, you've got some class talent. You've got some really good talent in the top, and I guess in the future, I'd love to consistently be like doing lands and like the bigger lands doing the B stream for it. So whether it
Yeah,
be
yeah.
the next IM event, studio work online B stream, like that's kind of where I want to see going forward. If I get the opportunities of, an IM Sydney or an IM Melbourne, something like that where I get pushed to the mainstream, obviously like great. Like that would be
Yeah,
superb.
of course, of
But
course.
you can't be thinking to yourself, that's gonna happen. So I guess I kind of look at it and it's okay,
Yeah,
my
yeah.
goals moving, I don't know, the next 5 years, staying full time, like making sure that I'm always got casting work ahead of me. Trying to move into a bit more studio work, trying to move into a little bit more land rather than just being online, getting those
Yeah,
bigger
yeah.
opportunities here or there, doing the B stream work. But just at least for myself, knowing that I'm improving, knowing that I haven't just been at one level and stayed at that level. Like I've got the hunger, got the motivation to keep pressing it forward, make sure that my casting ability can keep improving month by month, quarter by quarter, whatever it may be. And if all of those are fulfilled, honestly, I reckon I'll be just happy moving forward for, the next five, however long it is, honestly.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, just one more point before I think we can wrap it up is you talked about like you want to keep improving. What do you
Mm,
actually do generally, especially as a color caster?
yep.
I think that's a really important question. What do you generally do to like keep improving, keep yourself up to date with the whole scene, as well, all of this?
It's tough. First off, I think research is a key one. And I don't want to name any names, but I've casted with a lot of people over the years. Like when I think back to my early days, a lot of the AU guys casted with Flakes, casted with Jay, casted a bit with
Yeah,
Hawker, Dean, all those guys. And I have found that with some of the casters, not like just the ones I named, just in general, maybe preparation isn't like, whether that's changed now than when it was back in the time, but I felt as if maybe some of the casters that I'd worked with didn't prepare very much and kind of came
yeah,
into
yeah,
it like, okay, it's another gig. It's a bit of a rubbish gig. It's like a crap EU Cup. Don't really care. It's nothing big. So yeah, whatever. Roll out of bed and I'll get on camera. So I guess for me, like, you have got to be prepared for every single broadcast, whether you're casting a 50K event or you're casting IM Cologne. And I can say the preparation I did from Cologne than what I would do for, I don't know, an Eliza event or like a Home Sweet Home event, like whatever it is. I don't want to say it changed that much. Like I prepared the same. It wasn't S tier event, massive LAN event. I'm gonna put
yeah.
so much effort into it because you've got to be consistent. Like if one
For
event
sure,
you
for
prepare
sure.
really well for, and then one event you don't prepare well for, you're not gonna be the same caster. So I always say I'm casting a match, not a tournament, because you have to get into the mindset, at least for me, that whether I'm casting Apex and I don't know, Copenhagen Flames against FaZe or Liquid, you've still got an audience. You're still a caster. You've got to deliver a product. So
Yeah, for
nothing can
sure.
change. Like obviously, yeah, casting on studio and casting online, it's easier. You get a little bit more of a feel. You get that acceleration of the vibe and the energy. But a lot of what goes in behind the scenes, you do the same. So research, I like to try and prepare 2-3 hours before a broadcast every day. That will be watching a couple of demos, going over some Noasis, HLTV notes, Liquipedia, things like that. And then at the end of the week, okay, if a player, like for example, if I'm doing a whole event, okay, if a player that did really well, I want to look back and sort of say, okay, is he going to do the same for next week? Is he going to do the same for the next sort of
Yeah,
Swiss game? So I think it all comes down to making sure you've got a routine. Getting up, making sure you're going to sleep at a relatively good time, making sure that, you've got a bit of a schedule in mind. You know when your next event is coming in. You know when you've got to send your invoices in, because it might be small things, but it all adds up. And when it comes to a broadcast, you've got to be ready. So that's kind of the way in which I like to prepare, and just kind of think every game is just another game. Yeah, some games are going to be better than others. And
Yeah.
even the games where maybe it's a little bit boring, maybe the teams are a little bit rubbish, well, you've still got to bring that energy, you've still got to bring that enthusiasm, and you've got to know your stuff. And I don't want to take anything away from like the top tier talent, because again, like I look up to them because I think they're class at what they do. But when you look down at tier 2 and tier 3, these teams that play in these cups are ranked anywhere from like 30 to 150, 200. You've got to know them. You've got to know, are they an AWPer? Are they a rifler?
Yeah.
Are they a supporter?
Just so many as well. That's just,
it's
for
tough. So another thing I like to do is, this may be a little bit difficult for other people, but I like to contact a lot of players regularly. When I see a roster move, okay, what do you think? Like, is there something that I should know that maybe you're not supposed to know? Some rumors and things like that. Some of the players tell me, oh, okay, I think this move's going to happen. Okay, well, if I know that team's playing in an upcoming event and their fifth hasn't been announced and I kind of know what it is, well, I'm going to start watching some demos on this guy who I think is going to be their new player. So I think being able to get an in with the players is great. Really, really good. And especially if you get a good relationship with them, you can talk to them about anything. Oh, that set piece you did the other day, was that something a mid-round call? And oh yeah, they go into so much detail. and that's something as a caster that you don't get. Like, yeah, I'm watching it and I can see the setup, I can see the nades, I can see the positioning. I have an idea of what's happening, and I've got to try and explain to the audience what I think is going to happen. But unless I'm talking with the players and I hear their insight of why they did something, I don't really know to the fullest of extent.
I think that also makes it much more interesting when you actually bring it up from the player themselves and be like, hey, I talked to the player, this is what they told me about, like roster swaps, anything like this. It just makes it much more interesting. But I think it's also important with all the prep you do, what you just mentioned is, because I feel like a lot of times tournament organizers, when they think about how much should you pay your talent, they only work this and that many hours. No, like you just mentioned, you work, like you start 3 hours before you actually cast, you start already for each day of work. So that's, I think, really, really important to bring up as well. When tournament organizers pay you, Dweg, they pay for much more than you just casting the few hours you prepare before that already. So that's really, really important to highlight as well. And it's also really, really interesting to hear that from you, because it just shows how much work you actually put in to get where you are right now, which is super, super important. You will only get there with like putting that work in as well.
It's not going to come easy. And I mean, I'm sure a lot of the guys out there know it, that if you come in and you're a bit average, you're not really taking it that seriously, you're not going to go far. Like, you've got to put the time in. Another one that maybe we haven't even talked about is maybe balance. I know something that over the months, Jay and I have sometimes just worked ourselves silly, and like we've just got so fatigued in time. This whole player break, I've taken a big step back. Like, I've done holiday trips down the south of England. We've just come back today. Been, playing football with friends, playing cricket on Saturdays, and keeping up to date, what's happening on Twitter, HLTV, playing a couple of pugs here or there, like still keeping in with CS, but just knowing like enough is enough. Like, this is the player break. You've got to take a step back, because if you don't come refreshed and you don't come hungry for when your next event comes, you're not gonna have that X factor, like that extra sort of bit that TOs look out for. And I guess like it does come with hard work being a caster. Like, I guess if any of the up and comers looking at me, and like, I just look at what I've had to do, and I even feel like I still haven't accomplished a massive amount. Like, you have a look at Cologne, it's a big event, but it's my first studio event. I've never even casted a proper LAN. The only LANs I've done is local LANs. So when I look at how many years I've been going, and how, I don't want to say little success, but little big success, I feel like I found, it only pushes me to be like, right, next year's going to be even better. The end of this year is going to be even better, because you have to have the hunger. You have to have the drive.
Yeah, for sure. You can't be at the moment where you're just like, yeah, okay, whatever. I'm just gonna like either you're in fully or just like do something else. Maybe it's just not your thing. You gotta go one of those ways for sure. And think balance for sure. Also, a really, really good topic you just mentioned as well. Because if I experienced myself when I really put a lot into it, that you kind of like you lose a bit of quality as well. If you just cast too much, if you do too much, you gotta give yourself some kind of breaks as well. And I think that counts for everything you do, not only for casting, anything where you really, really put your time into. Burnout is a real thing you gotta take care of and make sure that that doesn't happen, because if it happens, that could actually also, at the same time, even if you work out, hurt your whole career. So really, really good that you bring it up as well. And yeah, I mean, with that said, we talked about a lot of interesting things, and I think that's like really, really great to hear, because your journey, it is insane. And to be honest, you just said like you did one big event, and it was huge for sure, but it's just starting now. So people, if you're watching this till now, then first of all, of course, thank you. But also thank you to Dweg for being here, and you can follow him. You see the handle here on the screen as well, at Dweg CSGO, to see whenever he is casting, or even if you produce new content or put down storylines, throwbacks as well. You put down a lot on your Twitter as well, a lot of interesting stuff. So just give him a follow as well. And of course, if you like the series here and the personalities I bring with those interviews as well and get to know, then of course don't forget to like and subscribe, because that will help me a lot as well. And yeah, thank you again, Dweg, for being here. And I honestly hope like seeing you and Jay succeed, that it is really just the start, especially for you, because it was your first studio event. I know Jay had some more events before that of that kind, but that is just the start for you, and we will see you at those events more often. So yeah, awesome. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you. Yeah, cheers. Really appreciate it.
And yet again, of course, thank you to everyone for watching this, and I see you next time in the next video.